All right. Hello to my fellow instrumentalists who have already subscribed to the channel, and hi to the rest of you who haven't yet. I'm Jacques Gadway, and this is Gadway Violin. In today's live stream, we're doing our first day of Christmas. In the next 6 live streams or so, we'll see how many it takes. We're going to look over 6 different Christmas carols, and for each of these Christmas carols, I've created an accompanying etude. So we're calling it 6 carols and 6 gifts. We're going to stream today, we're going to stream tomorrow, we're going to stream the next day, and then probably the next weekend after that. We'll come up with a real schedule soon. But basically, we're going to look at a carol each day, and we're going to look at its accompanying etude. Each of these etudes that I've created will take a look at a piece of violin technique that will help you get better at the violin. These etudes are geared towards more advanced players, but the carols themselves can be played at most levels. I would say any seasoned beginner, you might say, can play them. So, as you can see here, we're looking at this brand new packet here. 6 carols and 6 gifts. The gifts are etudes. Gifts to yourself for practicing. Each of the etudes will cover a different technique like arpeggios, spiccato, double stops, finger dependence, agility, and quadruple stops. Those sound pretty complicated, and they are, but the other goal is to learn these carols on the violin. If you are not new to your violin journey, and perhaps people around you know that you play violin, they might want to hear you play something this holiday season, so this is a good time to learn some of these carols and take advantage of what is probably very familiar to your ear and use it to learn new techniques on the violin. So with today, we're doing our first carol, and we're going to look at O Holy Night. The accompanying etude for this looks a little scary. This is our accompanying etude, O Holy Night arpeggios. Lots of shifting, lots of fast notes, with a focus on intonation across the strings. But let's start with our O Holy Night. In today's video, you will learn how to play O Holy Night on the violin, and hopefully some more complicated techniques along the way. We're going to start by just playing through the fingerings and bowings that I've chosen for this famous carol. We're going to start in first position. Let's just take that much. Let's talk about these fingerings. Whenever I write an addition like this or an arrangement, I only will put a fingering in to indicate a change in position. Any other time there's a fingering, well, there just won't be a fingering unless there needs to be a change in position. So, for example, we need to know where we start, so we're starting in first position, first finger, and then the next fingering we get is not till here. And that's to indicate that we are still in first, but we are shifting out of first up to third position. Every time you see a dash in these parts, it's going to indicate a shift. Most of the time, I will put the finger right before the shift, and then follow that with the finger of the new position. Most of the time, my fingerings are going to follow our rules of shifting, either after a long note, after a half step, or on a strong beat. In this case, we can see that we're after a long note. After this quarter note in this tempo, we got plenty of time to shift. The next shift here, we take advantage of 2 things, a long note and a half step, and we just use the same finger. Here we just use the long note to shift after. Let's take a look at that again. Oh, one more thing is every time you see this figure with these dashes here, those tenuto markings, really those are just to indicate that those bowings are of convenience, meaning we don't want them to sound like they're slurred. We actually might want to feel like they're sounding separate. We're just doing it to allow for our bow distribution to make the most sense. And then we'll take that rest to retake. Sounds a lot like the carol, right? I think we're doing it right so far. So a couple of things that I didn't write here, but I think are natural. I didn't write that we're going to do the same fingering here. Right, we're going to do the same thing here, 2-2. I think that's fairly obvious. And then I shifted out of instinct down here, but you definitely don't have to. That's why I didn't write it, because you could stay in third position there and just play a third finger here if you'd like. Both are going to be good. We're going to start right from measure 10. This is the second phrase. So in that instance, I stayed up in third position, and it works just the same. Both of those fingerings are going to be quite lovely. Once again, every time we have these tenuto markings, they're just allowing us to do bowings of convenience. They should still sound somewhat détaché. Alright, after this rest, we'll continue in third position. If we were still in third position, we'd just stay there. So far, I'm playing all of that in third position, and I think it works really nicely. If we instead were in, first position here in measure 17, so be it. We would just shift up after the rest, which is totally reasonable. We're going to start again here, taking a look at this second B section of this O Holy Night. So we're in third position, and we're just staying there for all of this. The difficult thing of this section is that each of these down bows are going to be basically 3 times as long as the up bows. Right? We have this down bow that lasts for 3 strong beats. 1, 2, 3. And then we have this up bow that lasts for just 1. And then we have the same thing again. 3 strong beats, up bow for 1. 3 strong beats, up bow for 1. So that means that we have a very unequal bow distribution. So should we then change the bowing? Or is there a technique that we can use and therefore learn by practicing this beautiful carol? And I think the answer is yes. When we want to save bow, save. When we want to save bow on our down bows, or up bows, it doesn't matter, what do we do? How do we save bow on our down bows or up bows? Or another way to think of it is, where does our bow want to be relative to the bridge if we want to conserve bow versus if we want to use bow. And the answer is generally when we want to save bow or we want to use less bow and still have a strong sound, we want to keep our bow close to the bridge. There's more resistance, or you'll feel more resistance when you're close to the bridge. So after we play these long bows where we're saving, we want to change that sounding point slightly so that we can do the opposite. So we have less resistance, we can use a little bit more bow, a little bit more comfortably for that up bow. But then we have to go right back. So the technique we're employing in this section is we are literally going to be changing our sounding point when we're on a down bow versus when we're on an up bow. You might be able to see it. It's a little bit subtle. I'm kind of trying to exaggerate it here, but it's really not going to be visibly that significant, which is one of those things that goes to show how big of a deal sounding point is. Even these small changes make a huge difference in how it feels to play the instrument. It allows us to really keep that bow moving and allows us to not have this really inconsistent sound where we still feel strong. We still feel strong for this long note, and we don't feel overly accented here on our up bow. So we might just say to ourselves, bridge, and maybe away. Whatever terminology you want to use to help you conceptualize that. One of the things I like to think about with regards to sounding point placement is I like to think about the actual hair, how wide the hair is, and whether or not my new position overlaps with where the old position of that hair was, or if there's actually a distance between those positions. So in other words, thinking of sounding point in terms of widths of hair or amounts of hair. We might consider, for example, an extreme shift in sounding point to be, imagine if there was a bow here and we jumped across it. We would consider that to be a full bow width that you're adding in between those sounding points, and that's a really stark difference. Most of the time, changes in sounding point are going to be basically adjacent. All right, we're getting a little in the weeds there. We're going to start from this second section of O Holy Night. Again, this is all in third position. And then if we want to grow through that entire section, I think that's totally appropriate as well. Right? This is the most intense section. Fall on your knees. Very, very beautiful stuff. Let's go after this arrival here, after this rest. We'll start right there. bit backwards on the bowing there, so if that happens, I think most likely we would just take an up bow here. We're in a ritardando, just so we can end down bow for comfort. By the way, I should mention, you can get this sheet music, but in case you don't want to purchase it, which you certainly don't have to, it's here on the screen right now. Please feel free to screenshot it so that you can use it in your practice at home. If you do want to, you can purchase it on my website, but by no means feel obligated. It is a nice way to support the channel. It's going to contain all 6 of those etudes and all 6 of those carols, each with fingerings and bowings marked in. But like I said, it's right here on the screen right now, so you can take a quick screenshot of that if you want to follow along on your own device. Alternatively, as you see, the music will continue to be on the screen here. Here, I'm going to give you a chance to screenshot this page as well. Here is the, oh dear, how do I do this? I'm going to have to do this in 2 parts. Here is the first etude. This is the etude for the Oh Holy Night. Very tricky stuff, but super useful, and it's going to follow along exactly with the song. These are the arpeggios, which represent each of the chords in the song. And theoretically, if you learn this etude, you could play it alongside the actual carol, and it should work in tandem or as a duet. I don't know how good the duet will sound, but it would work theoretically. I haven't tried it. But let's talk about these arpeggios. Let's talk about this etude. This is the first gift in the packet, the first etude, and it is probably the most challenging in the packet. We're starting off strong here. This is geared towards advanced intermediate, I might say. A lot of second position, a lot of shifting, and it can go as fast or as slow as you want. But the point is to get you really comfortable maneuvering from one position to another and staying in a position and staying with good intonation across the strings. So, let's take a look. We start in second position. For now, I'm going to do the suggested slur, which is every single large beat, but you can absolutely learn this for separate bows. And if we go slow enough, I might switch to separate bows as well. But for now, let's talk about doing it as is. Oh man, I messed up on my own etude. How embarrassing. So right there at measure 57, we see our first difficulty. And this is, all it is a 3-octave C major arpeggio. So we're sneaking in scales and arpeggio practice into this etude. You've been tricked if you've decided to practice this and you don't like practicing your scales and arpeggios. But this is exactly what we want to use this for, to really reinforce these good techniques. The fingerings suggested are exactly the fingerings that I'm trying to use. This is measure 57. We're going to start on a second finger at the beginning of the measure. This is the classic 3-octave arpeggio major root position fingering. We start on the second finger on the G string, and we shift 1 to 1. Then we shift 2 to 1. And then my whole life, I used to do third finger here, and then a big stretch on 4. But actually, I find it a lot more comfortable in later life to put the second finger instead of 2. instead of 3, excuse me. So I used to do this fingering 2, 1, 3 with a big stretch, but instead, as you see here, oops, as you see here at the bottom, we're doing that fingering, which is we're placing a second finger and a fourth finger. And so in essence, both of these are stretched, but they kind of complement each other. If you feel it yourself or you look, when I stretch this second finger, the fourth finger is having a much easier time stretching. That's really not that extreme. Versus if I place my third finger in this kind of low position, and then I stretch my fourth finger, it's a lot more strain on the hand. So it takes a little bit more practice initially to get used to it, because now you have to learn and kind of memorize 2 different stretches, because you have to memorize the second finger stretch and the fourth finger stretch. But what you really can try to aim for is you can try to get it so that both of those fingers instead of thinking of the second finger stretching and the fourth finger stretching, we can think of a hand frame or a hand shape for the entire beat. So that's kind of moving as a unit. Rather than thinking of stretch, we're thinking of stretch the hand into that new position. And it takes a little bit of practice, well actually quite a bit of practice to get really comfortable. In fact, I should be doing some more of this practice. And then, like always in our 3 octave scales, one of the most comfortable fingerings on the way down is to just shift all the way in one fell swoop as written here, back into the original position. So, once again, this is our arpeggios, our etude related to our O Holy Night. They follow exactly the chord structure and timing of the carol itself. And they're going to really help in practicing good intonation across the strings. We're going to start again from 57 slowly. Alright, let's try that whole section from the beginning. So if we remember O Holy Night. Not great. Could be a lot smoother, but in practicing it, we'll get it smoother. This is our first gift, our first etude from this packet, and there are 6 total in this entire thing, and each of them is going to tackle a different issue. Clearly, this is one that I should be working on as well. Let's continue after that first difficult arpeggio from right here. This is measure 59. This is from our 6 carols and 6 gifts and etudes. We're practicing our O Holy Night arpeggios. Let's take a look at that. Not easy. Not easy at all. So the first awkward thing that happens is right here where we break our pattern of going up and down. But once again, we have our units of hand shape. This is one of the things we're practicing in this etude is thinking about these larger sections, these larger beats. And then we have this fully dominant 7 arpeggio. And there's a few main fingerings we use for this kind of arpeggio. The one we're using here is a pretty standard one. we're just adding a harmonic at the top. But basically, you're in first position at the beginning. Well, you're in a position that allows you to be on a second finger at the beginning of it. 2 4 2 4. This is right here. Then we do the 1 1, and then 3, stretch 4. And then our second finger is right next to where that first finger just was placed. Then we shift. And then we just place each finger, which seems a little awkward. But if you practice your arpeggios with the fingering that I suggested before, with this second finger, then this actually feels already pretty natural by using a second finger here. If we use our second finger, third finger, fourth finger, this stretch feels pretty well baked in if you're used to using that second finger for our normal major arpeggio. Because this is essentially just a major arpeggio. Just adds an extra note. Adds that A natural in. Not all that difficult. It's one of those things where honestly, if you practice this measure here, measure 57, you practice your arpeggios, your major arpeggios, this one comes along quite easily. All right, we're gonna go after the rest. We're gonna be in first position here. All right, let's talk about those fingerings. I like them. Again, we're using inspiration from our regular arpeggios. If you're not familiar with your 3-octave arpeggios, this etude will get you familiar. These fingerings are pretty standard. First position, shift 1 1, then shift 2 1, and there's no stretching here in position. We're just doing 1 3 4, exactly where we'd expect those fingers to be. And then we're not doing the same way down that we did on the way up because we change arpeggios. We change the actual chord here. So we're going to put our second finger down exactly where we'd expect before shifting down. Let's take it right from 69. Yeah, it's pretty comfortable once you get it there. It's a fun little bit. You'd think after writing these etudes I'd be able to play them a little better, but it's the beauty of etudes, right? You can always use them to get better. You can always practice them. All right. After we have this section here that we just played, we go back into the same thing we had at the beginning, pretty much, down to the same exact C major arpeggio, 3 octaves. And that's because it's similar to what's happening in the song. We're kind of repeating stuff. But after the C major arpeggio, this large one, we finally do change. We're going to start right here on this large C major arpeggio, the 3-octave one. We're going to play it better. Then we go down. It's a pretty standard fingering as well. This is one of your options for doing A minor arpeggios. In general, for our 3-octave arpeggios, we follow a lot of patterns, and all of our arpeggios can use the same fingering, except for our arpeggios of A and below. So A flat, and G. Those arpeggios have to have unique fingerings because they start on an open string and or a first finger. The rest of the arpeggios can all start on second finger and just follow the same pattern from the G string. Here, we gotta use our first finger. And one of the arpeggio fingerings is as suggested here, but an alternative that some people like, I actually kind of hate it, is to always shift to the A, wherever the A is, shifting to a first finger. I'll show you what that looks like. So we would do shift to the A, shift to the A. And it's one of those where, like, if you think about it, it makes sense. It's a pattern. Your hand stays the same shape. But to me, it's just so clunky. We're doing just too much, too large shifts. We're going, shifting a whole fourth, and it's on a single finger. So there's just so much potential for a little bit too much portamento. Just seems a little too clunky. I prefer shifting to a second finger. In general, my large arpeggio fingerings are going to often benefit from or take advantage of stretches rather than trying to do all this big shifting. So we're finding that stretch here for that fourth finger at the top. So let me erase these nonsense fingers. Third finger would go where it wants, and then we stretch fourth finger. Now you might be wondering, if you've been paying attention, why are we doing a third finger here? When in the past, for the C major, we're using a second finger. Right? It's the same kind of thing, but why are we using a second finger here versus a third finger here? It's a very specific question, but I actually think the answer is pretty simple. And the answer is because the interval is different slightly. It's literally different by a half step, but it makes a difference. This C natural to E is a major third. And so if we were to use a second finger instead, it's just a slightly larger stretch. And that slightly larger stretch for me is enough to make it a little uncomfortable. And to me, the whole reason we use the second finger in the other example, when we're doing the major arpeggios, for example, the C major arpeggio, the reason we're using the second finger here is to help us feel like the hand is opening up in preparation for that fourth finger, which is stretched. But here in the A minor arpeggio, because we're doing a major third instead of a minor third, we already feel as though our hand is opening up somewhat. So we already don't feel like we're stretching a huge, great deal for that fourth finger. And so it's not so uncomfortable. And I actually prefer to use the third finger there because I just feel like the second finger ends up being a little too much. Then we go to the next one. We're going to continue on from there. The fingering here is as written. I should mention that this is a stretched finger. Both of these are stretches. So we're shifting up to fourth position right here. And then we're just stretching for these two notes. I'll show that in slow motion right now. And the specific way of getting up there is not necessarily the most common, but the actual shape of the top of the arpeggio, that kind of stretch, is very, very common in this inverted arpeggio and this kind of arpeggio. Once again, when we're practicing this etude, we're kind of tricking ourselves into practicing scales and arpeggios, which is great. Everybody should practice scales and arpeggios. It's a really great way to get a lot better with your intonation and your agility and consistency across the instrument. But, you know, scales and arpeggios can be quite boring sometimes. So finding and creating etudes that make us do this in a way that allows us to trace alongside an actual beautiful melody or a good song that we're very familiar with is a nice way to keep it interesting and to keep it a little bit more palatable. Let's go from measure 76. Oof, but with good intonation. My intonation's all over the place, so I'm going to take it slower, just as you should do if you get to this in your practice and you're having trouble. And I'm going to do it separate bows, just to really reinforce what the proper movements are supposed to be in my left hand. Yeah, so the shape is just not quite right at the top. Yeah, so the shape here is just one of those things that I just had to work out a little bit. 1, 3, 4. The only real stretch is that fourth finger. And just figuring out what that feels like and what that is when it's comfortable just takes a little bit of work. Even that, I'm a little bit flat on the fourth finger. Let's go from there, moving on. And to the next page. Alright, so the rest is much of the same. The only thing that I should point out here is that we're going to shift down to first position here over that open G, which I don't actually have written in the part. From 84. Yeah, tricky stuff. And as you learn it and work on it, you just start to speed it up and you start to figure out exactly how your hand needs to move in order to be the most efficient and the most consistent with our intonation. With all these arpeggios, it's really all about figuring out what the shape of your hand looks like and feels like for the duration of the arpeggio. Usually there's a a feel or a kind of structure to each of the arpeggios in your hand. So you can get it to a speed, hopefully, eventually, where you're thinking of each arpeggio as kind of one gesture, one motion, instead of thinking about all the individual notes. So we started today with our O Holy Night. Ended with our arpeggios. Our arpeggios did not start off super good, but already, just from practicing it one time through, essentially, we're getting a lot better. And this is the kind of development and comfort that you can create by just working through this and being very deliberate with your intonation. Got tripped up there. Can't see the music. One of the things I should note also is when you're practicing these, we're really focused on the left hand, obviously, but one of the things we should focus on is how our arm feels during these arpeggios when we're doing our slurs. We should get comfortable with these arpeggios in such a way where we don't do so much of this segmented string crossing. If you see your arm kind of jittering across these arpeggios, you're probably not fully comprehending the exact string heights and everything. And really you want to plan those motions so that they're very fluid. See, even right now on my up bow, I'm a little bit too jittery. As much as possible, just one motion. And we can use that harmonic on the top. Time from after that rest. Redemption, please. Yeah, so it's going to take some work to get it really comfortable. But this is not something you would do in a single day. This is meant to be one of 6 projects between now and Christmas that I think each of us can practice and work on so that we get these carols really, really comfortable and potentially good enough to perform in front of family and loved ones. And then get this arpeggio for us on the back end so we can practice this good technique and develop some new ideas. But while you're practicing these etudes, and today we only went over the first one, but there's 6 different etudes, one for each of these different songs. In each of them, you should be able to still hear the original carol in your head while you play it. Oh, holy night, right? Forgot about that one. Got a shift there. Not super great. All right. That's all we're going to do today. Next time, this is going to be tomorrow. We're going to stream more regularly just to get through all of these as our kind of Christmas goal. We want to get through all of these early in the month so that hopefully you can have time to practice all of it. So maybe you can enjoy playing this music when it's actually the season. We're going to have lots of fun arpeggios to get through. If you want your own copy of this music, instead of needing to follow along with everything in the video, you can find it on my website for a price. Of course, you can definitely just follow along on the screen. In each of the videos, I'll make sure to have whatever we're working on the screen so that you can take a quick screenshot and keep it for your future reference. But if you're curious, the link is down below for where to get this on the site. The 6 carols that are in this batch are going to be O Holy Night, which we went over today. The first Noel, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, Silent Night, Away in a Manger, and We Three Kings. Hopefully with those, you can learn and get into the spirit of Christmas and get into the spirit of your practice. Gift yourself with these difficult etudes and learn some really important techniques such as arpeggios, 3 octaves and otherwise, spiccatos, strokes, double stops, finger independence, agility, and quadruple stops. It's a lot to work on. It's a lot to talk about. We'll be back tomorrow to stream the first Noel and spiccato etude. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, happy practicing.